Our story picks up with Boethius having been arrested and under house arrest in a little cottage outside of the city. He's crying and beseeching God, but no answer comes. But then, all of a sudden, Lady Philosophy appears to him in a vision. And the whole point of Lady Philosophy appearing to him is to cure him of the thing that ails him, a wrong view of life, a wrong view of what he's lost, a wrong view of what he still has, and a wrong view of the God who rules all of this. So Lady Philosophy forces Boethius to look at what he's lost. And in this first part, we want to see she wants to convince him of two things. She wants to convince him that what he's lost, he had no right to in the first place. And she wants to convince him that even if he did have a right to it, it was actually not something of value. All of us, as we saw with Aristotle, pursue happiness. Happiness is the highest good. The question we have to ask ourselves is, did Boethius lose things that make him lose his happiness? So, first, let's see what he lost. He lost his wealth, his power, the enjoyment in life. He's going to be tortured pretty soon. He's suffering. He lost his reputation. He's now a traitor to his country, even though he doesn't deserve that name. His reputation, his fame has been ruined. He's become infamous rather than famous. And he's lost, eventually, his life. And he's waiting for his eventual torture and execution. So what are the things that he's lost? Well, he's lost what we might call, and what Aristotle would call, the goods of fortune. Why are they called the goods of fortune? Because they're things that we have that are not really under our control. The reason why we have them is not simply a matter of us having earned them or thereby gained them for ourselves. Take our life. We didn't earn our life. We didn't choose to be born. This is given to us, and where we're born, what country we're born in, what socioeconomic position we're born in, and even what opportunities are open to us. So you might think, well, yeah, but I have earned my wealth. I started out as poor, and then I worked hard, and by working hard and making the most of every opportunity, I accumulated wealth. So isn't wealth something that is not a good of fortune for a lot of people? No, because did you earn the opportunities that you got? Did you earn the position in the society that opened those opportunities up for you? What if you were born as an untouchable in the lowest caste in Indian society, classic Hindu society? No matter how much you worked, no matter what you did, no matter how many ideas you had, you were restricted from education, you were restricted from opportunity, you were restricted from any kind of advancement, no matter what your native talents. If you were born in the South as an African American slave before the 1860s, and even after the 1860s until the 1960s, no matter what kind of native talent or work ethic you had, that wouldn't be enough to allow you to come and raise your position in life to gain wealth and power. Your reputation would always be bad simply because of the color of your skin. So all of these things, no matter how you look at them, depend on things that you have no control over, and that's why they're called the goods of fortune. Now, the interesting thing is one of the things that Aristotle pointed out as part of the good life is justice. And we saw in the lecture on justice that justice governs the question, the kinds of goods or advantages that are the goods that come to us through fortune. And so, if, for example, we are deprived unrightfully of those goods, then it's impossible for us to have a good life. This is the big problem that Boethius sees in Aristotle's conception of the good life, is that it doesn't just depend on virtue, it depends on what kind of fortune we have. How many of you have ever watched Wheel of Fortune? My wife and I love to watch it. The Wheel of Fortune is not something invented by the game show. This, if you look at the cover of your book, is exactly the metaphor that's used for Lady Fortuna, or the goddess of fortune. She's a fickle goddess. You might be $10,000 in winnings because you're very good at solving the puzzle. And then you spin and you get bankrupt. Doesn't matter how good you are, you've lost. There are so many times we watch and see the tragedy of people who know how to play the game well. If you just gave them the chance to solve the puzzle, they would solve it immediately, but they can't get a good spin on the wheel. That's fortune. So what did Boethius lose? He lost the goods of fortune. But were they his to start with? If we accept that these are things that are not in our control, for example, our life, then they couldn't have been things that we really earned. And if they're not things that we have earned, then they were given to us freely, without us deserving them. And so the very fact that we're alive and that we have any good in life is something that comes from fortune, yes, but not something which we have earned. And since we haven't earned it, it really isn't ours by right. And if it's not ours by right, then if it's taken away, we can't complain when it's taken away. And so therefore, Lady Philosophy says, if you follow this reasoning, you have to admit that what you lost, Boethius, is not something that you had a right to anyway. This can't have been something that God stole from you because it wasn't yours to start with. So that's her first response. Now that's not a very satisfying response, but it does answer the question of the justice of taking these things away. Does Boethius, do any of us have a right to these things? And the answer has to be that since our very life and the talents and everything that could possibly lead to these things are things that are not in our control and that were given to us freely, that we couldn't have earned because they are given to us by our birth and by our life. Therefore, we didn't exist. We couldn't have earned it. If that's the case, then it follows that what was given to us is not ours. It's not something that we have a right to. And therefore, whether we like it or not, we cannot complain of the injustice of having it taken away from us. So that's the first answer. But the question is, even if it has been taken away, did we really lose anything of value? Lady Philosophy wants to argue and is going to spend a substantial amount of Book 2 and Book 3 to argue that actually what you lost not only is worthless, but leads away from the one thing in life that we all should value, and that is our happiness, our flourishing. So at the very beginning, she wants to give a general argument for this. So let's see, first of all, these particular things: wealth, power, pleasure, reputation. Let's concentrate first on this notion of life. Because isn't that the most valuable thing we consider that fortune gives us, our life and our health? Without this, we would have none of this. Is Boethius really going to lose his life? Boethius had read Plato, and Plato had given an argument that the soul, what really constitutes myself, cannot die, even with the death of the body. If you want to read more carefully his arguments for this, you read his dialogue called the Phaedo. We're not going to get into this in this course, but we're going to go into the argument that convinced Boethius that his soul is immortal. Now, what do we mean by the soul? Well, the Greek word for this is the word that's translated often into English as psyche. That is our conscious ego, our self. That's my true self. Even if, for example, my body were to continue to exist on a respirator, but I would have permanent loss of consciousness, I would become into a vegetative state, we would all say that that's the equivalent of death. So if my consciousness survives, my conscious deciding and acting and reasoning self would survive the death of my body, then I would survive. That's truly who I am. So why would we believe that that's immortal? Don't we believe that consciousness depends on the brain? And that if the brain were to die, then that would mean the death of our conscious ego, our self? It can't be the case, Boethius argues. First of all, that conscious ego or self, that psyche, has no parts. Well, don't I have hearing and sight and touch? Aren't these different experiences what constitute my conscious self? No. I see, but I see different things over time, don't I? So my vision isn't me. I am the one seeing. My experiences can constantly change, but that doesn't mean that therefore I have gone out of existence. So they can't be parts of me. My experiences are not my parts. They're what I produce or experience. So I continue on, even all of my experiences change. Therefore, my experiences, though various and many-parted, are not myself. So if I were to really see what I am a being that doesn't have parts. I am the self that experiences all of these different things, different parts. So if I have no parts, then I can't disintegrate, because to perish is to disintegrate, to come apart. So that I have a self, that self has no parts, means that I cannot fall apart, and therefore I cannot perish. It also means that I am not my body, even my brain. My brain has parts. I have no parts, so therefore I am not my brain. I am not any equivalent to any part of my body, and therefore my true self is immortal. Well, what does this mean? This means that if happiness really was equivalent to the possession of all of these things, then I am screwed. That's a technical term. Let's think why. All of these things, when I die, when my body dies, come to an end. I can't bring my wealth with me, can I? How many of you seen a hearse with a U-Haul behind it? If you did, you would laugh because that's silly. You can't take it with you. You can't take your power with you. When Stalin died, he lost all of his power. He lost his fame and reputation. He lost all of his wealth. All of the things that constitute fortune are lost with the death of your body. So let's say that that really is what causes you happiness. Then you are guaranteed to lose your happiness for eternity, aren't you? That's what follows. So let's say you know this. Then no matter how happy you think you are while you have these things, you are guaranteed you're going to lose it, and lose it forever, and therefore have eternal misery with the loss of your bodily life. Because I lose it all at death, don't I? Well, what if that does? So isn't that going to contaminate my happiness? Am I not always going to be worried that, look, I love it now, this is great, but I'm going to lose it, and I don't know when I'm going to lose it because I have no control over when I am going to die. So if I'm smart and wise, then my happiness will be destroyed because I know I'm going to lose it, and I know that I'm in for misery if this is what happiness really is. But what if I don't care? What if I can develop the attitude of, I'm just going to enjoy what I have now, and therefore not going to care that I lose it when I die? Well, then it couldn't have been all that valuable in the first place. If you could wisely not care, if you could, in a sagacious way, understand that the loss of these things really is not a big deal, and therefore intelligently not care that they get lost with the death of your body, then they're not valuable, are they? So either way, your happiness that comes from these things in general lead to your misery or are not worth it. They lead to your misery because if they really are worth it, you are going to lose it and therefore are going to be in an eternity of misery. Or you're not going to have to care about the loss of it and therefore they're worthless anyway. And so, Boethius, what do we see? We see what you lost you didn't have a right to in the first place. You didn't earn any of it. It was out of your control. That's the meaning of fortune. Also, even if you lost it, even if you lose it, what you didn't lose, what you lost, isn't what leads to your happiness anyway. It's not true happiness. In fact, if you think it does and you stake everything on it, it will only lead to your misery. In our next section, we're going to then look at Lady Philosophy's particular arguments for why each of these things, the more you have them, the less happy you will actually be.